When you are engaging your recruiting department, a lot of people just tend to think that there is somebody over there in recruiting and we're going to send something over to them and they're going to be able to fulfill it right away. And if they don't fulfill it right away, then we'll be, sort of going, oh, they're not doing their job. There are many different kinds of people in the recruiting department. And the one thing to understand is that there are the different roles within the recruiting department. So, first is if you have a small firm, you are basically going to have a recruiter that is also your HR person, who is also your employment person, your employment management person. They also might be your operations person. Because a lot of times when my team is helping providing services to different companies, they really check what is your role. You're recruiting and you're doing the finance. You're recruiting and you're doing the operations. Or you are a sourcer, a recruiter, someone their sole job is to make sure that they're finding candidates to fulfill in the overall talent process. The other thing that's interesting is that people think that posting a job on LinkedIn or posting it as part of your announcement, hey, that is, that's how you're going to find a candidate. Actually, it's a little bit more in depth than that. It is cultivating candidates. It is cultivating contacts in various different communities. It is understanding what those candidates are looking for. Are they looking for career growth? Are they looking for less of a commute? Are they looking for more remote work? These are things where recruiters tend to also become sort of counselors. Is this job going to be the right job for you? But they also, the recruiters have to then figure out, is this candidate really going to meet the needs of the company? And are they also going to meet the needs of the contract that they are supporting? And also, are they going to match the culture of the contract that they are supporting? Because what's interesting is we think that it's a slam dunk, you just make a job offer to somebody. But what's fascinating is that a lot of people don't understand a candidate will get into a job and the culture just doesn't fit right. And what ends up happening is the candidate leaves or isn't successful, and you're right back to square one. So a lot of evaluation goes into the beginning processes of talent development. So what are some of the tools? As I mentioned, a lot of people think that the job postings that you see on LinkedIn is the only thing that's out there. There are several different tools. One is basic sourcing. A lot of people don't understand that sourcing is basically very much like social engineering. It is really finding candidates, those hard to find technical talent. You're not really going to find them on the job board. You're not going to really find them on LinkedIn or social media, but you might find their friends. So understanding that social media plays a role. But when we've done studies, Career Crossroads has done several studies out there about how employers are finding their candidates. Number one is always going to be referrals, because you have to understand a referral is really going to be your most effective and your most efficient and most cost-effective way of finding talent. Is being sure that you have a very good network, not only as a recruiter, but that everybody in the company has a really good network of people who can be referred into the company. The next is job boards, understanding that there are different kinds of job boards out there. Those that are specifically in niches of tech, security clearance, part-time, linguists. You can find candidates on a variety of job boards, on generalized job boards, or specialized job boards. There's also events. It's fascinating to me in the 20 years that I've been doing recruitment marketing that people always say that events are going away. Well, they've told me that over the last 20 years that they're going to go away about 4 times. But they end up evolving into something that is just more catch name. Because a lot of people don't understand that before someone wants to go through the process of filling out an application, of doing the interview, they really want to talk to somebody at the company about what it is to work there. They really want to sort of do their ground intel as to why would I want to work there? What is so interesting about the work that they're doing? And they really can't get that by reading advertisements or social media posts. They really like asking those questions of recruiters at events. Then there's so many other ways that people are finding their candidates. A lot of people are going out and searching various different blogs, being able to find people who make comments. There is so much social engineering that goes into recruiting that, there are so many programs out there that train recruiters on how to do all of these things. So what drives really good recruiting? Glenn touched upon that earlier, and one is leadership. Having a leadership that is willing to understand what goes into building the talent pipeline, making sure that there are candidates always interested in applying for the jobs that the company is advertising for. And also making sure that there is leadership as far as the team of recruiters that they have. Too many times I've seen in this community that the leaders don't stand up for their recruiters. They don't understand that the recruiters have a very difficult job. And, sometimes I think I've seen it 5 times in the 20 years where there has been this go out and just completely get rid of the entire recruiting department and start all over again. Recruiters are building connections with your community. They're cultivating relationships. Just because they're not able to get a candidate into the pipeline, it might mean more that the candidate is hesitant about working for you as a company, or they're not at the right place in their career to make that jump. There may be their career growth is not at the place they want it to be. They might have family situations. They might have a big project that's coming around the corner that they're very excited about. There are many different reasons why a candidate is not going to follow through with, following up with a recruiter. Some of the other things is understanding that cultivating the relationships with candidates takes time. Similar to business development, understanding that candidates really like to get to know a company before they apply for it. Yes, you do have the candidates who go out and they apply to everything, and what we call it is spamming or throwing the spaghetti against the wall. But it's really having the recruiters that take the time, that cultivate the relationships in the community. I know of several very great recruiters who basically have been cultivating some candidates for years. They know that the person is talented. They know they have the right skills. They know they have the right clearance. They just don't have the right job for them. And many of the good recruiters I know, they spend time every 6 months reaching out to every single candidate they've ever talked to, catching up with them, finding out what's going on. And it's really that cultivation of not only the individual reputation of the recruiter, but it's also standing up for the reputation of the company, how the company is going to treat the candidate. And this is what's called the candidate experience. And this is something that has really come around in the last 10, 15 years as far as treating candidates like customers and understanding that getting back to them when they apply, getting back to them when they ask questions, scheduling conveniently for them to meet with the hiring managers, and overall explaining the overall process, because we do studies every year. And what's fascinating is that job seekers don't understand the overall process that happens in recruiting. They don't understand that they're going to have a tech interview. They're going to have a phone interview. These days, they're going to be doing it all online. They're going to be doing it all through Zoom. And then once they get to a certain place in the interview process, they're then going to be meeting with the hiring manager. And then from there, from meeting with the hiring manager, they're going to go on and meet with the customer. That is a long process. That is a long time. And one of the best practices that we always share with our customers is explain upfront to the candidates exactly what the process is going to be and who is going to be in touch with them throughout the entire process. Many companies do a really great job of putting this on their website. They'll either write it as a blog post or just a simple step-by-step. When you apply for our positions, this is how we're going to follow up. And those are many of the components that drive really great recruiting. And as I said, that takes leadership. That takes people who are willing to put in the processes for that to work, to get the tools to be able to make sure that people are able to find the candidates, and the relationship internally with the company to make sure that the information is being shared with the candidates about the overall process. So what's fascinating to me is that a lot of people don't see that recruiting and business development are very similar to the point that it's almost like, why didn't we think about this before? As I've been saying a few times, it's relationship building. Recruiters are building relationships with key talent pools out there. They are making sure that they're in touch with people who are getting their certifications, that they're making sure that they're touching base with the linguists who they might need for a future contract. They also know that their reputation as a recruiter reflects their reputation as a company. Very similar to the way business development knows, if you're going to treat someone well within the community, if you're going to be acting honorably, you know that people are going to want to do business with you. And finally, market intel. When you think of it, when you think of the amount of people that a recruiting department talked to in the community, the amount of ground intel, the amount of marketing intel that they get, how companies are treating their employees, if there's been any kind of salary cuts, if there's been a change in benefits, if there's been a change in strategy. These are all things that come up in conversations between recruiters and candidates that can be shared with the business development department to help form a strategy over the overall business that they go after. So as Glenn was saying earlier in the year, there were several protests, and one of the protests was because they didn't have the right candidates as part of the proposal. So having the recruiting department in a complete vacuum is one of the worst case scenarios. If they have specific personnel that they need to be able to have on that proposal, they need to have time to be able to find that candidate. They need to have time to be able to cultivate that candidate, but they also have to have time to have that candidate get back to say they approve to be part of the proposal. The other aspect of the worst case scenario is that the recruiters don't have the background information on the contract that you're going after, so they're not able to specifically speak to the candidates about the kind of work they're going to be doing. And if they don't know that they need to have boots on the ground next week, they're going to wake up Monday morning and be told, oh, by the way, we need to have 45 linguists by Thursday. And your recruiters are working on SIGINT or JANT or something like that, they have absolutely no pipeline that's been built. They have absolutely no way of being able to pivot really quickly and go after a different talent pool while they already have conversations in place to fulfill requirements that are open right now. So let's sort of back up and talk about what would be some of the best case scenarios. So the first is engaging the recruiting department as soon as you're thinking about going after any kind of business. Engaging them so that they can understand, okay, this is new business that we're going after, and they need to understand what are the companies that are there already that are on the contract, so that the recruiting department can go after and start cultivating the incumbents, making sure that they find out, okay, are the incumbents happy? What are some of the things that would make them want to move? What's sort of the mood within the company at that time? But it takes a while to build those relationships. They're not going to be able to call up right away and have all of the incumbents their best buddies within 2 or 3 days. It is going to take them a while to cultivate that relationship. It's also understanding that sharing what the business that you're going after is with the recruiters so that they can do the research and they can start speaking intelligently to the candidates about the kind of work is out there. You know, when a candidate is like, well, you know, why would I want to move? Why would I want to change careers? What's so exciting about this job? And if the recruiter's like, I don't know, it's just a new proposal we're going after, that ruins the reputation of your company, that ruins the reputation of the recruiter, and you've basically cut yourself off not only from that candidate, but their entire network, because you know the first thing that that candidate's going to do is say, you know, I just got this crazy call and I don't think I ever want to work with that company, and they're going to tell their friends and so on and so on. So it's also really important in the best case scenario to share the time frame of the RFP, understanding when you need to have boots on the ground so that the recruiters can start building their timelines. How long is it going to take to do interviewing? How long is it going to take to putting together the job offers? How many different people do these candidates have to meet with to be someone on the ground? What are, how long does it take? There are some types of candidates that take a lot longer to cultivate than others. So understanding that entire process is really important for the recruiting department to know. It's also what we've been noticing within some of the proposal processes, because we've been asked to participate in them, is the contract, the business development department has to show that the company that's bidding on the contract is already doing things to cultivate the new talent. So is it that they've contracted for services or held an open house? Those are now things that we are seeing we're being asked to do as a vendor to help someone bid on a contract. We just did 3 open houses so that they can say, yes, we're already cultivating the talent to be part of certain contracts. The other thing is understanding that building that relationship with your recruiting department is a way of you getting different market intel that will help you on your proposal. Because recruiters, as I said, they're talking to hundreds of people every week from different companies, from different contracts and different agencies, and they're gathering information as to what is going on in the community, what is going on within a specific company. And they're also going to be able to share with you, the recruiting department is going to be able to share with you what are the labor costs, the labor salaries that people are looking for right now. I can't tell you how many times recruiters come back to us and they say, we would love to, go after these candidates, but the bidding that has been done, it's 40% below the market rate. So if you want to make sure that your company is going to be successful in bidding on a proposal, be sure you're putting in the price points so that you can get the talent to fulfill that contract. Because you don't want to be that contractor that said, we couldn't fulfill our contract because we couldn't get the talent because we didn't have a really great recruiting department. Well, it's not that you didn't have a really good recruiting department. You didn't have the salaries built into the contract to stay competitive within the community. So when you prepare to go after business, be sure you're doing some key things with your recruiting department. First and foremost, if there is a specific kind of key personnel that they need to go after and that they need to have as part of your proposal, please let them know as soon as possible so that they can start cultivating that relationship and letting the candidate know that this is a proposal and asking their permission to be able to be part of the proposal. The other is understanding the timeframes and making sure you share that with the recruiters so that they know how to build in their timeline of interviewing, cultivating the relationships, making sure that all of the different hiring managers are scheduled and on board with being able to fulfill that contract. The types of candidates. if your recruiting department has specifically been doing linguists or IT, and you as a company have decided to go after a new kind of business, you really need to give them the heads up that said, okay, we know that you've been building this pipeline. We need you to start a new pipeline that's going to be able to fulfill this new contract. And finally, letting your recruiting department know who are the companies that are the incumbents so that the recruiting department can start building those relationships. So it's an easy switch of those incumbents from one contract to the next. There are also some things that you're going to want to do on an ongoing basis to make sure that you're supporting your recruiting department. One is championing their efforts. I can't tell you how many times I've gone to an industry luncheon and I've heard people just trash their recruiting departments. They just rip them apart saying how awful they are. I actually was embarrassed. I actually took one of my customers who was the VP of recruiting to a local industry lunch. This was years ago. And just by happenstance, there was 3 people from their business development department at the table. And it was probably one of the most uncomfortable hours I ever spent, because all they did was, rip the recruiter apart. And I don't think that recruiter spoke to me for at least 5 years because it was such an uncomfortable situation. So be sure you're championing your recruiting department and their efforts, because you need their support to get the talent into the contract to be successful. And understand that to do recruiting, there are tools that are needed: events, job board, social media, training. I can tell you that most recruiters have to learn on the job. They're not provided any kind of training whatsoever. That is why I started Recruit DC 11 years ago, to provide a one-day conference of best practices recruiting training. And we always made it $85 because we knew that companies were not going to pay for their recruiters to be trained. So we tried to keep it at a level that the recruiters could, pay for themselves. Share your forecast. Give the recruiting department time to understand that, okay, in 6 months, you're going to go after this kind of business. What are you going after in 2021? So that they can start thinking of the process they use and the strategies to go after that talent that you're going to need for those, contracts coming up. Also, use them as a source of information, because they've got all this information about what's going on in the industry, who's changing jobs, who's, they're going to be interviewing people, and someone's going to say, I don't want to work at this company anymore because, and that's a lot of market intel that you can use to shape your overall proposal. And finally, be sure you're connected with your recruiters on LinkedIn. It's fascinating to me that people don't understand that, as I said earlier, the number one way a recruiting department is going to be able to get candidates is through referrals. But if you're not connected with your recruiters on LinkedIn, there's not going to be really any way to start building that overall referral network. I hope I've covered some key points that will help you work a good relationship with your recruiting department.